and welcome to India Business Hour. I'm Shireen Bhan. The big stories that we're tracking for you this evening. More than 90 countries face higher taxes on their exports to the US starting today. India faces a 25% tariff rate. This will double to 50% from the 27th of August as President Trump penalizes India for importing oil from Russia. Prime Minister Modi pledges to protect the interests of farmers after US President hits India with the highest tariff rate in the world. The Prime Minister says he's ready to pay a heavy price. Government sources say India will try to negotiate with the US as the 50% tariff rate takes effect only after 21 days. Textile, jewellery, engineering and other industries fear a standstill on exports. Many say a 50% tariff rate is similar to a trade blockade, but India Inc. remains hopeful of a resolution. The Indian economy braces for a growth hit as Trump doubles the tariff rate. Citi projects GDP growth to be impacted by nearly 1%, expects the rupee to come under pressure as capital flows are likely to slow down. Russia's President Putin will visit India later this year, says the National Security Advisor Ajit Doval, who's on a visit to Moscow. Prime Minister Modi will visit China for the first time in 6 years on the 31st of August. The Chinese embassy calls both nations to deepen trust and widen cooperation. The Kremlin says US President Trump and Vladimir Putin have agreed to meet in the next few days. Ukraine's President Zelensky says Russia seems more inclined to a ceasefire now. A roller coaster ride on Dalal Street, the Sensex and the Nifty stage a dramatic recovery in the last hour after declining to a 3-month low. The rupee gains marginally against the dollar as dealers suspect RBI intervention. Shares of Zomato's parent Eternal Exchange hands in a block deal worth over 5,600 crore rupees. Alibaba-backed Antfin is likely to have exited this company. This will mark Antfin's second exit this week after Paytm. SoftBank books a profit of nearly $3 billion in the first quarter. Tech investments, especially in Nvidia, boost profits. The value of the Vision Fund rises $4.8 billion thanks to gains from listed companies like Swiggy. Rescue operations continue for the third day after a cloudburst in Uttarkashi triggered a landslide. At least 6 people dead and dozens feared missing. The army says 70 people have been rescued so far. More than 50 people are still missing. Congress leader Rahul Gandhi accuses the Election Commission of colluding with the BJP in a massive voter fraud, claims there was a sudden addition of 1 crore new voters between the Lok Sabha and the Maharashtra state elections, adds that a Congress probe found over 1 lakh fake votes in Karnataka's Mahadevpur, a seat BJP hits back, accusing Gandhi of attempting to destroy democratic institutions. The Supreme Court dismisses Justice Varma's plea against the in-house committee's report on the cash pile found at his residence. The verdict sets the stage for an impeachment motion in Parliament. Well, let's go straight to the top story this evening. President Donald Trump's new tariff regime takes effect today. More than 90 countries face higher taxes on their exports to the US. In a social media post, President Trump claimed that billions of dollars were now flowing into the US due to a hike in tariffs. Exports from India face a 25% tariff starting today. This will double to 50% from the 27th of August after President Trump has penalized India for importing oil from Russia. Now, textiles, leather, engineering goods, agri and seafood sectors are expected to be hit the hardest by the increase in tariffs. However, certain sectors continue to remain exempt. This includes goods targeted under the sector-specific duties like steel, aluminum, pharmaceutical and semiconductors. India's electronics exports are also exempt at least till the 14th of August as things currently stand. Prime Minister Modi has pledged to protect the interests of farmers without explicitly mentioning the tariff hike by the US. Speaking at the Swaminathan Centenary International Conference, which is in the memory of the father of India's Green Revolution, the Prime Minister said he's ready to pay a price if needed. The Trump administration has given India a 21-day window before the tariffs kick in. That's the additional 25% tariff. Sources tell us that the Indian government is working towards finding a solution and is aiming for a win-win deal. Here's the Prime Minister. Take a look.
हमारे लिए अपने किसानों का हित सर्वोच्च प्राथमिकता है। भारत अपने किसानों के, पशुपालकों के और मछुआरे भाई बहनों के हितों के साथ कभी भी समझौता नहीं करेगा। और मैं जानता हूं व्यक्तिगत रूप से मुझे बहुत बड़ी कीमत चुकानी पड़ेगी, लेकिन मैं इसके लिए तैयार हूं। मेरे देश के किसानों के लिए, मेरे देश के मछुआरों के लिए, मेरे देश के पशुपालकों के लिए आज भारत तैयार है।
Well, that's the Prime Minister. Now, industry bodies have said that a 50% tariff rate is similar to a trade blockade. They seek the government's intervention. Manisha standing by with more on the impact of higher tariffs on specific sectors. Manisha, the sectors that are likely to be the worst hit, take us through them.
Well, dozens of sectors will bear the brunt of Trump's tariff take. Let me take you through the gems and jewelry industry first. And U.S. is the largest export destination for the industry, accounting for $9 to $10 billion annually, which is almost 30% of overall exports. The fear of higher tariffs has led to a 75% drop in exports in the month of July. As things stand, all exports have been suspended. The Jewelry Export Association is seeking government intervention and has requested state governments of Gujarat and Maharashtra already to provide relief to the workers. Next on my radar is the textile industry, where the U.S. accounts for more than $8 billion in annual exports. This is 35% of India's overall textile exports. Industry believes that the U.S. buyers will not accept such a steep hike in prices. They have also halted all shipments to the U.S. and trade has completely stalled. The Federation is calling for support from the government, including the removal of 11% import duty on cotton. They have also asked the government to release cotton stocks to cushion the impact. Another industry that will be impacted is the seafood. Total annual exports to the U.S. stand at nearly $3 billion for this one. The Industry Association is estimating loss of 24,000 crore rupees. They believe that India is at disadvantage compared to other countries and have called on the government to explore alternative markets. And finally, it is the Rice Exporters Federation also fearing that it could lose out to Thailand, which faces a much smaller tariff at around 19% compared to India's proposed tariff rate of 50%. The rice exports last year was worth $42 million. The Industry Association has said that trade stands suspended as they await clarity. These are just some of the worst affected industries due to the U.S. tariffs. Here are the reactions from the corporate leaders on the U.S. tariff hikes and its implications.
It's very difficult for any industry to mitigate a 50% tariff.
Yeah.
Well, let's understand that. That's impractical. We've been talking to our customers. The customers understand this. They're supportive. And they all believe that there will be a political solution on the table sooner than later. We have taken a tariff hit of about 14 crores, okay, which is roughly about $1.6 million on an export of roughly 200 million.
If there is a 200% or thereabouts, I'd say anywhere from 20% to 200% tariff on pharmaceuticals, it would have a significant impact on the U.S. market per se. I mean, as we've talked in the past, 70% of the drugs in the U.S. are imported. 50% of generics are imported from India. So obviously, high tariff will have an impact on drugs that are imported from India.
For Bajaj, I can tell you in a word that we are quite unconcerned, and I'll tell you why. Our exports to the US are basically in two brands, KTM, that's about 10,000 vehicles a year, and Triumph, which is about 5,000 vehicles a year. So, firstly, it's 15,000 vehicles a year in a volume of about 5 million vehicles. So that's less than 0.5% as far as volume is concerned. Nevertheless, it's an important market. It's a very profitable market. So it's not a business we would like to lose. And I don't think we are going to lose this business.
They want our US part of the business to be moved out to Bangladesh, Indonesia, and Vietnam, where we have our facilities. And I think that would be a death knell for at least for this particular season, which is coming up for the Indian industry, because 50% tariff, most of the retailers won't be able to absorb or have any mitigation.
Whatever is in the interest of our country is what we need to prioritize. And if that means we have to buy oil from wherever we get it cheaper, that's in the benefit and in the interest of 1.4 billion Indians. And hence nobody and no country can bully our country. So that's the step and stand that's been taken by the government, and we completely back that and support that because that's in the right interest for the country.
Well, reactions there coming in from India Inc. Meanwhile, the Trump administration has continued to defend Washington's additional tariffs as a response to India buying Russian oil. White House trade advisor Peter Navarro called India the Maharaja of tariffs. And as we've been articulating, both those claims are without fact.
The fact that India is the Maharaja of tariffs. It's the highest tariffs in the world, charging on American products. And it's got high non-tariff barriers, so we can't get our products in. So we send a lot of dollars overseas to India to buy their products in an unfair trade environment. India then uses American dollars to buy Russian oil. Russia then uses those American dollars that come from India to finance its armaments to kill Ukrainians. And then American taxpayers are then called upon to pay for the weapons that have to defend Ukraine against Russian armaments paid for by American dollars that came from India. That's got to stop. That math doesn't work. The president understands the connection between economic security and national security, so that was the bottom line there.
Well, India's stance is clear. It will stand its ground and not blink first, especially on allowing the US greater access to sectors like agriculture and dairy. Experts have pointed out that the additional 25% tariff threat is more likely a pressure tactic, a move President Trump seems to favour because it's worked for him in the past. Parikshit, standing by to wrap up some of the instances where President Trump has stated success, not just with the threat of tariffs, but with seemingly outrageous and often misleading statements to try and get his way. Parikshit.
Well, tariffs have been the mainstay of Donald Trump's second term in office. That and unpredictability. And he has weaponized both against numerous countries with some success. As some experts and political commentators have been saying, these have become a substitute for diplomacy where he is concerned, especially since most of his policy decisions come from his posts on Truth Social and not through formal or official channels. In many cases, even the countries affected learn of it through his posts and not through communiques to diplomats, embassies or concerned government departments. Let me give you some examples of how he has used tariffs to get his way or to try and pressure other nations to toe his line. Vietnam was one of the countries that got caught flat-footed with Trump administration. After days of negotiations, it looked like Vietnam would have to bear a tariff of around 11%, much lower than the original number that Trump had announced. But just days before the July 8 deadline, President Trump announced the number at 20%. This did not come through the negotiating teams. He informed Vietnam's General Secretary about it directly, even while negotiations were taking place, and announced on Truth Social that the deal was done. Vietnam, he said, would impose zero tariffs on American products. Vietnam had to later clarify that no such deal had been agreed to in reality. To date, there is no signed deal between US and Vietnam. US has also wrangled a trade framework agreement with the European Union. Remember, this is not a trade deal yet, but it's the way Trump went about it that's interesting. He started with the threat of a blanket 35% tariff on the European Union goods, accusing the European Union of unfair trade practices. The EU retaliated with tariffs of its own on American products. A couple of months later, Trump offered to lower tariffs if the European Union promised to invest $600 billion in American infrastructure and manufacturing. Now, there is no formal agreement to this, but Trump has already gone on record to say that not only has the EU agreed to do this, but it has also given US the money with no strings attached to spend just the way Trump wants. He has done something very similar with Canada as well. But this began with an accusation that Canada was responsible for supporting illegal immigration to the US and for causing the deaths of thousands of Americans by facilitating the trafficking of fentanyl across the border. He announced a 25% tariff on nearly all goods imported from Canada and also spoke about the possibility of making Canada the 51st American state. A few months later, he abruptly increased tariffs on Canada from 25% to 35%, saying Canada had not done enough to curb the flow of drugs into the US. This has now become a full-blown trade war, with Canada retaliating by stopping electricity supply to countries in the US and applying tariffs on vehicles that use Canada's roads to get supplies to Alaska from other US states. Trump has used similar threats and inflammatory, off-the-cuff remarks on camera and on social media posts to try and get his way with other countries. With Brazil, he has threatened a 50% tariff unless the current administration stops prosecuting his old ally, former President Bolsonaro. Against South Africa, he threatened 30% tariffs of what he called white genocide against Japan. He suddenly announced 100% tariffs on semiconductor imports. The list of countries he has threatened with tariffs are long. And not all these tariff threats have to do with trade relations or balancing the trade deficit. Many are politically and ideologically motivated. So too, experts say, is the case with India. India is a member of BRICS, and Trump sees this bloc as a threat to not only American influence on the global stage, but to the global strength of the US dollar. India has also proven to be intractable when it comes to allowing US access to sensitive sectors like agriculture and dairy. So experts believe Trump has fallen back to a tactic he has been using regularly in his second term: inaccurate statements and the imposition of steep tariffs to try and get his way. One such example, his public proclamation that he brokered the ceasefire between India and Pakistan. This is a claim India has publicly and internationally refuted multiple times. He also ramped up his statements about the obnoxiously high tariffs and non-trade barriers in India. But data shows that India's simple average tariff is around 16%, in the same range as tariffs levied by Bangladesh, Turkey and Argentina. At one time, Trump even said that US does very little business with India. But data shows that in FY25, US was India's largest trading partner for the fourth year in a row. Bilateral trade was valued at $131.8 billion US dollars, with India's exports to the US rising 11.6% to $86.5 billion. The latest announcement of an additional 25% tariff on India also came out of the blue after 5 rounds of negotiations on a trade deal, and it is predicated on India buying oil from Russia. When India is not the only country to do so, India's purchases did not violate any sanctions, and India's purchases followed requests from the earlier US administration to help stabilize the global oil markets. So many believe this is just another attempt at using his favorite weapon, and it comes with a 21-day window built in to see if India will give in and strike a deal that Trump can add to his list of what he calls his victories.
Parikshit, many thanks for joining us. Important context there on what is going on. Now, President Trump's tariffs will also impact India's GDP. Brokerages say a sharp fall in exports and a stress on India's current account could pose a short-term downside risk to India's growth. Citi has projected that GDP growth could be impacted by nearly 1%. Jefferies also expects the rupee to come under pressure as capital flows are likely to slow down. On to the day's market action. A recovery in the last hour pushing the market into positive territory, with the Nifty closing close to 24,600. Broader markets performed well, and more than 30 of the Nifty stocks ended the session higher, led by IT, metal and auto. And in the currency market, the rupee remained steady despite the tariff announcement. It ended a little unchanged from its previous close of 87.72. Dealers suggest the RBI may have stepped in with dollar supply early in the day. Dollar buying also remained muted, with traders expecting a possible resolution within 3 weeks. The rupee is down over 2% since the 1st of July, and that makes it the worst performing currency in Asia. Now, India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval has said the Russian President Vladimir Putin will visit India soon. According to a Reuters report, the Russian leader could visit by the end of the year. Speaking in Moscow alongside his Russian counterpart, Doval said that the high-level engagements during his visit were substantial and fruitful. Take a look.
We have got a very special relationship, a long relationship, and we highly value our strategic partnership. We have had high-level engagements, and these high-level engagements have contributed very substantially. We are very excited and delighted to learn about the visit of His Excellency, the President of Russia, President Putin, to India. I think that the dates are almost finalized now. The more important thing is this, that is, these summit meetings have always been the watershed points.
Well, that's the NSA Ajit Doval in Russia. The Chinese embassy spokesperson has responded to Prime Minister Modi's visit to China that's scheduled for later this month. The spokesperson said, and I quote, "In today's complex landscape, it makes far more sense for both nations to deepen trust, manage disagreements and promote peace in Asia and globally." End of quote. Prime Minister's trip to China will be the first since the Galwan clash in 2020. Now, as the US moves to impose secondary tariffs on Russia's trading partners, the Kremlin has said that President Trump and Russian President Putin have agreed to meet in the next few days. The White House has also hinted that President Trump is open to meeting both Putin and his Ukrainian counterpart. Zelensky has also said that Russia seems more inclined to a ceasefire now. On Wednesday, US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff met Putin in Moscow. Trump described the meeting as highly productive. If the summit happens, it would be the first direct meeting between a sitting US and Russian president since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine.
Well, there's a very good prospect that they will, and we haven't determined where, but we had some very good talks with President Putin today, and there's a very good chance that we could be ending the round, ending the end of that road. That road was long and continues to be long, but there's a good chance that there will be a meeting very soon.
Well, that's going to be a meeting watched very closely. Meanwhile, Brazilian President Lula da Silva has said that he saw no room for direct talks with Trump as US tariffs of 50% on Brazilian exports came into effect. In an interview from his residence in Brasilia, he said, and I quote, "My intuition says that Trump doesn't want to talk and I'm not going to humiliate myself." The leader also said that Brazil is not about to announce reciprocal tariffs. Toyota Motor expects a nearly $10 billion hit from US tariffs on imported cars and higher material prices for the entire year. The Japanese automaker has cut its full-year profit forecast by 16% on the back of this. However, Toyota's head of finance has said the company would continue making cars for US customers regardless of any impact from the tariffs. In global earnings, SoftBank Group reported strong numbers for the quarter. In June, it posted a profit of $2.9 billion versus a loss of $1.2 billion in the same period last year. The strong performance was driven by gains in its Vision Fund. The tech investment arm saw a boost from public holdings like Grab and Swiggy, along with private investments in Indian startups. Reliance Industries chairman Mukesh Ambani has chosen to forego his salary for the fifth consecutive year, sticking to a decision he took at the start of COVID. This was made public after Reliance released its annual report today. In a message to shareholders, Ambani said Reliance is reshaping to become a new-age deep tech enterprise. He pointed to over 1,000 scientists working on cutting-edge research in AI, renewables, advanced materials and digital platforms. Ambani said he expects O2C and the oil and gas business continuing to cater to India's growing demand. The conglomerate's focus is on building platforms to empower people and elevate India's position in the global economy. We are going to head into a break, but up next, Congress leader Rahul Gandhi accuses the Election Commission of colluding with the BJP in a massive voter fraud. That and more when we return. Catch all of CNBC TV 18's news and updates on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, X and Jio Hotstar. The big national story: leader of the opposition in the Lok Sabha, Rahul Gandhi, alleges large-scale voter fraud in the 2024 Lok Sabha election by the BJP and the Election Commission. In a press conference, Gandhi flipped through a booklet of alleged fake voters added in the electoral rolls in various constituencies. He claimed there was a sudden addition of 1 crore new voters between the Lok Sabha and the Maharashtra state elections. He also added that a Congress probe found over 1 lakh fake votes in Karnataka's Mahadevapur seat.
This is not our data, this is EC data. And EC कह रहा है कि हम फ्री एंड फेयर इलेक्शन करा रहे हैं. और उनके डेटा में एक असेंबली में 1 लाख फेक वोटर्स हैं. फेक एड्रेसेस, डुप्लीकेट, फॉर्म 6, अलग-अलग तरीके. तो हम इलेक्शन कमीशन से नहीं कह रहे हैं, हम हिंदुस्तान के युवाओं से कह रहे हैं, हिंदुस्तान की जनता से कह रहे हैं. ये आपका भविष्य है, गरीबों का भविष्य है. ये आपके आंख के सामने पूरा का पूरा सिस्टम चोरी किया जा रहा है.
The claims made by Sri Rahul Gandhi and his team are completely bogus they are targeting the Election Commission of India only to tarnish the image of the Election Commission of India.
Rescue operations continue for the third day after a cloudburst in Uttarakhand triggered a landslide. At least 6 people dead, dozens feared missing. The army says 70 people have been rescued so far. More than 50 people are still missing. 3 CRPF jawans have been killed and many injured after a bus fell into a gorge in Jammu and Kashmir's Udhampur district. The vehicle was carrying 23 jawans. Rescue efforts launched immediately. 2 personnel died on the spot. 1 succumbed to injuries on the way to the hospital. The Supreme Court has dismissed Justice Varma's plea against the in-house committee's report on the cash pile found at his residence. The verdict has set the stage for an impeachment motion now in Parliament. In international news, Israeli forces continue to pound Gaza, killing at least 23 Palestinians since dawn. 4 more people have died from starvation in the enclave, taking the total death toll from extreme malnutrition to 197 since the start of the war. The UN has said that Israel's blockade of Gaza could lead to deaths of at least 100 premature babies in the region. Now, India's credit card crisis is on the rise, with unpaid bills jumping by 44% in 1 year. Ritu explains why this crisis is growing and how to use your card smartly to stay out of trouble.
Credit card usage in India is at an all-time high, but alarmingly, so is the number of people that are falling behind on payments. In just 1 year, the unpaid credit card bills overdue by 3 to 12 months have surged by more than 44%, which is more than 33,886 crores of dues left unpaid as of March 2025. The largest chunk of this overdue payments in absolute terms is from people who are late in repayments by 3 to 6 months, a rise of more than 44%, touching 29,984 crore rupees. Payments that are delayed by 6 to 12 months have also jumped by almost 50% to nearly 4,000 crore rupees. Now, even with this ballooning debt, India's love affair with credit cards is not really slowing down. The total credit card outstanding dues hit a massive 2.93 lakh crores as of June 2025, which is almost double compared to about 3 years ago. And the number of active credit cards is also up from a little over 6 crores in 2021 to more than 11 crores now. Indians are also spending more than ever. In June of 2025, for instance, cardholders spent nearly 1.83 lakh crores in a single month. And that is nearly triple of what we were spending about 4 years ago. So what's really going on? Well, credit cards are very easy to get, and swiping, let's be honest, is a whole lot easier than saving. Banks are offering you cashbacks, free airport lounges, and EMI options to make them more attractive. But here is the part that most people overlook. Credit card interest rates in India range from anywhere between 42 to 46% a year. And so if you keep not repaying your full bill on time, and I mean the entire sum that is owed and not just the minimum due, you are going to find yourself trapped in a debt spiral.
All right, Ritu, many thanks for joining us. And with that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of India Business Hour. Thanks very much for watching. Stay tuned. The news will continue right here on CNBC TV 18. We've got plenty more coming up for you.